Hello, and welcome back to the What is IT podcast. I'm your host, Douglas Wood. Today, we're talking networking, the thing that nobody really thinks about until it's down, and then it's all we can think about until it's back up. We're also going to talk about the other side of networking, the human side, the side that helps us reach beyond ourselves to have a greater impact by connecting with others and building meaningful relationships. Our guest today knows networking in a way that few people ever do. By day, he manages the technology for a historic New York City institution that is a pillar of the community and manages the real estate for over 14 acres across Manhattan. By night, he builds haunted houses for charity using his technology skills to make an impact in his own community. Today we're talking What is IT with the CIO of Trinity Church NYC, Jim Kennedy. Hey, Jim, welcome to the podcast. Really excited to network with you today.
I'm glad to be here.
So, Jim, you've been at Trinity for over 20 years, a long time for anybody in any organization, and especially a long time in IT. I don't think there's many people out there that would connect a church and IT. What did you find in there that hooked you in to doing technology in an institution like Trinity?
Well, you said 20 years. I'm actually getting closer to 30 because I think this year was 27.
Wow.
Which is a long time. I grew up there, basically. It's funny that a lot of people ask me, I was there when I was in my mid-20s. So I literally grew up at Trinity. I learned a lot about what I do today because of growing up there in that place. But I didn't really know what I was getting into when I first started this job. Basically, I had my own consulting firm that I ran when I was younger. I was a master certified Novell engineer, so I was doing a lot of work with that.
Hey, editor here. I'll be popping in from time to time to break down those tricky IT terms Doug or our guests might not get a chance to explain. Like just now, Jim mentioned Novell, the technology company. Novell was a major software firm best known for its NetWare networking operating system, which helped businesses connect computers and share files and printers across a local network long before today's cloud tools. So when someone like Jim says they're a Novell shop, it usually means the whole environment runs on Novell tools like NetWare, GroupWise, or ZenWorks for managing and updating all their systems. Jim mentions Novell a few times in the show. See if you catch it.
And I decided at one point to say, me and my wife wanted to have children. It was getting a little crazy with the consulting work, and I wanted to find something that was stable, that had medical coverage, that I didn't have to worry about on my own. And one of my clients, their wives was the corporate controller at Trinity, and I didn't really know. I looked it up, it had a church, it had all this real estate, it had all these different things going on. I was like, all right. So I took a call. It was a phone call. They literally interviewed me over the phone, if I remember that correctly, because it's hard to remember things from 27 years ago. Yeah. But it was a phone call. I talked to a consultant they had there, and they were like, okay, we're looking for a network supervisor. They were a Novell shop. They ran GroupWise, ZenWorks. I was like, okay, great. I know that really well. They hired me over the phone. So I was like, okay, there wasn't much to it. So I showed up. I do remember this. It's kind of weird, but I remember this. I showed up there because there's a really weird piece to this. I literally worked when I was a local 3 electrician. I literally worked on the corner of that block at 2 Rector Street. And I looked at that church every day, and that building just never knew that I was going to actually wind up working there. And so when I walked there, I was like, oh my God, I know this place. And I walked in the door and I was like, this is really weird because there's a bridge that connects the building to the church. And I was like, oh, there must be a real big connection with this. not putting one and two and two together, I got in there and I started to learn about, wow, this is a lot more than what I thought it was. Walking through the halls, there's priests, and just it was very different than what I was used to.
Tell me more about that in terms of your learnings, right? Any good tech in church moments that you could share with us?
How about the only Linux-driven church organ on the planet at one point?
That's pretty good.
So,
Hey there, editor here again, back with another quick explanation. So Jim just mentioned Linux, as in Linux operating systems. You can think of Linux as a cousin to operating systems like Windows and Mac OS. They all let you run apps and manage files, but Linux is far more open, customizable, and widely used behind the scenes on servers and cloud platforms. An operating system is basically the stage crew of your computer, quietly handling lighting, sound, scene changes, so your apps, the actors, can perform without tripping over cables. All right, with that, let's get back to the show.
We had during 9/11, all the dust, we had a very old church organ there, but it was beautiful and sounded amazing. The dust got into all the pipes and destroyed the organ. And it takes a very long time to build a church organ of that size and that complexity. A lot of it's built by hand. I think it was built in Germany. So we needed something in short term, and we came across a man who was building this amazing organ with Linux servers. We had 12 or 14 Linux servers. And what was great about the organ itself is that we were able to sample different organs from all over the world. So we had the only organ that played different organs from all the churches around the world.
Wow.
And it was at Trinity. So we had a massive server room inside the church that ran this organ that played out. It was just incredible.
Wow.
Now we're getting a brand new pipe organ. It's taken years to do this, and that replaced the digital organ that was there.
Wow. Amazing.
Yeah.
That is an impressive one for sure. In the church, unfortunately, some of the work there is burying the dead, but in your own personal life, you're bringing them back to life every Halloween. Take me deeper into that. How does your love for tech and working at a church and Halloween all get connected? What's the story there?
I loved Halloween. Started out at my house in Maspeth, Queens, and which was very small, a little sidewalk thing, and blew up to when I moved to Long Island to this fairly big maze in my front yard that we had hundreds of people. Actually, we had 1,000 people come one Halloween night. Collected tremendous amounts of canned food and for the homeless and for the needy, and it just got too big. And I wound up moving on, selling everything. One year I decided I can't do this anymore. Plus, it was probably really making my neighbors a little mad because we had the fire department come once. There was so many people there. So I wound up selling off through Craigslist all my stuff. And I had a ton of things. And I met this father and son, the Bairds. They came down and they told me this story that they were doing something very similar in Massapequa. So I gave them a great deal. I wound up probably giving them most of my stuff. And it's funny because I said, okay, I'm done. I'm not going to do this anymore. And that he reached out to me and said, hey, how would you like to work with us? I said, sure. I mean, what the heck? I was missing it a little bit. So the next Halloween, I got together with them and we built one in his backyard. It was actually fairly big. It was underneath a massive wedding tent. He came to the same realization. We actually wound up raising $11,000 that year for charity from his backyard. But we destroyed his entire backyard grass. All his grass was destroyed. Everything was dead. His mother was not happy about that. So we raised money for two charities on Long Island. One was Yes Community Counseling Center. The other was the Heather's Fund, which is a charity for firefighters and for police children that had different type of illnesses, which is kind of funny because today is 9/11 and they're a big part of that. But from there, we went and they had a warehouse in Massapequa that was 12,000 square feet. And they said, hey, listen, why don't you come here and do it? So we then progressed into this massive warehouse where we built out, I don't know, the first year it was about 35 to 40 rooms. We used about 9,000 square feet of that warehouse. We saw about 3,000 people the first year. The second year, it got even bigger. The third year, we were using 12,000 square feet. I think we had 65, 70 rooms. We saw close to 8,000 people, and I think we made $75,000 the last year for charity. Between all 3 years, I think we raised over $225,000 for these two charities. So it was amazing. And we went out on such a great high note. And it's funny because I envy the guy who I partnered with, Kevin, because he was a young guy. I was much older than him. He had an amazing family. They all, just like my family, were all kind of part of this. When we got out and we had to shut it down because they needed the warehouse back. He went out on his own and started his own professional haunted house. Now he has the number one haunted house on Long Island. So great story and a lot of great relationships. We actually won not won, I shouldn't say. We were given the key of the city to Massapequa or Oyster Bay, I think it was. So it was amazing journey.
Wow. And it's still alive today, right? That work that he did, he now runs the business and opened it up. And there's still this big Halloween happening that was originally inspired from Jim Kennedy's backyard.
Yeah, pretty much. And he still does charity. So he still, I think, gives back to charity from that event, which is amazing.
Amazing.
Yeah.
What throughout that journey, what's the nerdiest IT trick you snuck into one of those Halloween events? Something you were excited about, like the geek in you came alive and you said, wow, this is like the best.
So my thing in Halloween was always, I was more of the technical element. I brought the technical element to all the things that we've done, right? So pneumatics, I worked a lot with animatronics. I was doing all the sound. He was a set designer. The guy could have worked for Disney. I always told him that. The sets were amazing. And what he built them from was incredible. Like we didn't have money. Like we didn't have a lot of money. So we had to come up with, whatever we could. We built an elevator. Actually, it was infamous, this elevator, right? We built this elevator that literally people swore when they got on the elevator that they went to a different floor. That's how amazing it was. Wow. And it was completely computer controlled. I mean, our whole haunt was completely computer controlled. All the sound came out of MP3 players embedded on different servers that then went through amplifiers throughout the whole place. But that elevator literally had pneumatic doors, so you felt like you were getting on a real elevator. The floor was based off pneumatics, so it went with a soundtrack. So it literally felt like you were moving through floor to floor where there was lights flashing on top. And then the cord broke, the cable broke, and it felt like you fell. And when you got to the bottom, the door opened and we had it set so it looked like you come out on another floor. People literally thought they were on a different floor. They couldn't understand how they got from the basement back to the first floor to leave the building. So I think that was pretty cool. And that's what I brought to the haunt a lot of times, those type of aspects.
It's amazing. Amazing. We could speak all day about it because I'm so excited to hear on the all of the electronics you put in, all of the, I'm sure, kind of programming, connectivity, everything just fascinating, right? Because this is huge. You're talking about an enormous space that you're putting together and creating an experience for a lot of people. What drove you through this? Like, where's there's got to be a passion in there. You said you loved Halloween, but you love technology, obviously. Like, was this just the two came together and you're like, couldn't help yourself type thing?
I always loved the idea that we were giving back. Right? Yeah. So having that, and that's kind of why I'm still been at Trinity for 27 years, right? We're not building a widget. We're not bringing anything to market. We're just giving back. So that gave me the ability to have a direct connection to giving back. When you work when you work in Trinity, sometimes you lose the feeling of how you're directly connected to what the actual organization does, right? Because you're foundational at the bottom. Yes, everything we do affects them in some way. When I did the haunt, I saw where that money was. I knew every dollar, where it went. It was all going to charity. And I saw who we were helping, which was phenomenal, right? And it was a lot of drive. It was a lot of dedication. I had to get out because we would start building in April, and every weekend from April to the beginning of October, we would be working. And sometimes I would go from work right to the haunt, which work in Manhattan and then go to Long Island after that commute and stay there till midnight and then go back to work. Wow. So it was a lot. It was a lot on my body. It was a lot of a mental strain. And at the same time, you run an IT department in an organization that was in, a lot of change all the time and a lot of things going on. So yeah, it just felt good to know that not only was I working at a company that was giving back all the time, but here I was doing something with somebody who had the same kind of feeling that I did about helping other people, and this strong feeling about scaring the hell out of people, which was great.
I love that. I love that. It's the two come together, and yeah, the giving back thing is really, really powerful because it's purpose driven, right? You've got a purpose, and you feel that your skills being applied towards something that has real meaning just gives a lot of passion,
Yeah.
for sure. Well, the podcast is about what is IT. And so I like to break things down a bit. And I'd like to talk more about today's topic in terms of what exactly is networking. You've got a lot of experience in this space, right, from the past. And obviously you do a lot more at Trinity today than just networking. But for people who only know that Wi-Fi mysteriously appears on their phone, how would you explain what's happening behind the scenes?
I think I'll explain it how I would explain it to my mom, or someone who doesn't really understand getting into core catalyst 9500 switches, a top of rack Nexus switches, something like that.
Whoa, okay, let's break that one down. So Jim just mentioned core catalyst switches, which are a type of network switch. Think of a network switch as a central train station. Every cable is a track, and every switch quietly routes each train or data to the correct platform without delays or collisions. It keeps things easy, smooth, and reliable for the whole network.
I'll say when you pick up your phone and you see Wi-Fi just magically working behind the scenes, there's a whole bunch of these digital roads and traffic signals that IT set up. So that's what we kind of call networking. In other words, networking is just making sure that all the devices are talking to each other, right? And then they connect out to the internet. We set up the routes, we set up the connections, the behind the scenes plumbing, so that when you hit the button to open that app, everything just flows. Yeah. It's a bit like building an invisible highway for your data. That's kind of the way I look at it.
Wow. Really good answer there. Why is it so invisible to people though? It's so fundamental, right? If we don't have networking, most of what we do today doesn't work. People can't talk to each other, businesses shut down, but it's really invisible to most people until it breaks, right? Then everyone's like, oh, this is down, or Wi-Fi is down, or whatever. But why do you think that is? Why it's so fundamental, but yet we never talk about it?
So I use this analogy all the time with my staff too. I don't know if it's a smart way of doing it, but this is what I use. I like to use the example of a refrigerator, right? People want their tech to work like a refrigerator. They don't really need to understand how it works. They just expect that when they open the door, the light comes on and everything's cold. The only time they get upset is when they open that refrigerator door and the light's not coming on and their stuff ain't cold anymore and all their food is going bad, right? So it's in the same way people want their tech to just be there. They want it easy, they want it friendly and invisible in the background. They don't have to think about the network at all until something goes wrong. And that's really our job in IT. It's to keep it reliable, straightforward as a refrigerator, right? So they can just do what they need to do without a second thought. And the only time they ever got to worry about it is when it breaks. And my job is trying not to ever let it break, right? So, few and far between do we ever have that as a problem. We have a fairly reliable, very reliable network. So
you've got to do this on a pretty large scale, right? Because among other things, you oversee the networking at Trinity, and it's much more than just the church that people see there. You've got, over 25 properties, millions of square feet, a reach around, the country, if not the globe, in terms of connectivity. How do you keep it all connected, up and running?
Oh, wow, that's a big question.
Magic.
It's magic, basically. Yes, lots of magic. Little guys running around, little people running around, just fixing it all up. I don't think it's just about the hardware and infrastructure. A huge part of it's the human side. So how we kind of enable people to communicate and collaborate, especially now that we're working in this hybrid work environment. We have a couple of days where I think it's like 2 days a week now where people are remote, and we have to figure out a way to make it as seamless as possible when we're connecting with each other. So we use tools like WebEx, right? WebEx chat. Every one of our conference rooms is WebEx enabled. We're set up for hybrid in those rooms, so people can join the meetings whether they're at home or they're in the building, and keep those conversations going, right? That's the most important thing. On top of that, we have a 24 by 7 outsourced help desk, so people can support anytime. We have an AV support team that understands all the different platforms like WebEx, Zoom, and Teams, and we specifically put WebEx in because of the agnostic nature of it, so that all those platforms will work on it without having a problem. In fact, we've just invested a significant amount of money into redoing and upgrading all of our conference rooms within the office spaces, so that now it's just a single button to push. So someone basically just creates a meeting and they add the room to their meeting. When they go to that room, they literally press one button, the meeting starts. It's that simple. And then we use other things like, making sure the network's secure. So we have single sign-on, VPN, taking advantage of all the cloud services like Office 365 and OneDrive and SharePoint. Basically, in other words, it's keeping the entire Trinity community connected. It's about enabling, the way I look at it, it's about enabling those human interactions. Just as much as they're important, is it about the technology itself? To make sure that people can talk and work together. That's really it, and keep that whole Trinity community running as smoothly as possible with an extremely complex environment behind it.
And that's a really powerful point, because I think one of the things that people don't see that I love about networks are the way that they mimic human communities, right? It's all about these protocols that we follow for communication, the trust of who we're talking to, the volume of communication that's happening, the collaboration, all these things that we do as people. These computer networks do too, right? These devices, the interconnectivity, they're all built in there. You've spent a long time in this space. Do you see any lessons from the way that your technology networks operate that humans should learn from?
It's funny, you mentioned protocols, right? So basically those are like the rules of the road, right? So you could say the same thing about humans, right? We have protocols about communication. It's really important. It's the way we build trust. It's the way we collaborate. It's kind of how we make sure everybody's kind of on the same page. So if anything, yeah, I would say just like you have on a network that, you want things to be able to communicate with each other, so you need to trust each other. You need to be the same way in life, right? So when you talk to a person, having the ability to actively listen to them and know that, they want to feel that they're being heard, is very similar to the way networks interact with each other through the protocols. So making sure you're talking the same speech so you can transfer that, or the network is talking the same protocol so you can transfer that data across itself. So yeah, I think there is some things you can learn from that: being flexible, being agile, and listening to each other.
Yeah. And I think the reverse is true too. Like one example I like to have is the firewall. Today, we're bombarded with so much information, a lot of it not good for us, a lot of us not relevant to us, but yet we let it all in. Like a networking firewall helps you put up rules to keep stuff out, and humans could definitely use a lot more of that. But do you have any other lessons from kind of a life in networking that the human networks could learn from, or things that they could implement?
Building trust in human relationships is all about clear communication and reliability. Same goes for networks, right? So when you build that network, you want devices to trust each other, and you want security in place, and you want everyone to have a reliable path to communicate. It's the same thing either way, right? You think about it, it literally is what we're talking about. As building trust is a big piece of it, and you hear about zero trust all the time, but it's not really that. It's literally building that trust.
Now, Jim might hear this one a lot, but I'm not so sure about everybody else. So Jim's talking about zero trust security models. It's a cybersecurity approach built on never trust and always verify, which means every user, device, and connection has to prove it's legitimate. Think of it like a haunted house where each creepy room has its own bouncer at the door. Even if you got into the house, every time you try to enter a new room, the bouncer checks your ticket and ID to make sure you actually belong there. And that constant recheck at every doorway is the idea behind Zero Trust.
It's a great point. Great point. Take it up a notch from networking. We call the podcast, What is IT? So in your words, Jim, what is IT?
IT is definitely different now than it was 10 years ago, right? I mean, that's kind of a crazy thing, but I think IT now is more about people and process and a little less about technology. Back in the day when I first started, it was very much about the technology. We didn't care as much about, I shouldn't say we didn't care about the people. We just didn't, relationships and it weren't as meaningful as they are today. Now it's about translating it's more about translating what people are saying. And that's where the listening and the active listening come in so important. And I think that's lost sometimes. I think IT is more about building relationships now. And the technology is of course there. It's always going to be there. But it's more, particularly in this day and age when AI is going to be getting into everything. And a lot of jobs are going to be changing and migrating and going in different directions. It's so important to have that communicative skill. It's so important to be that translator now than it was before. Because a lot of people, and people would hate me for saying this, but with AI, there's going to be more and more opportunities for people to solve things on their own versus having to literally call and contact IT. I guess that's just my thoughts on that area.
Yeah, no, that's great answer. It's definitely more about the people side and the orchestration and the communication and listening and all that than it ever was before, because making the two worlds work in concert is really what's going to make everybody's, whether it's your organization for profit or your nonprofit or just your personal life. We like to talk a little bit about hero moments on the show here. Just anything that you've had from your past that you've seen where there's something in the area of networking that saved the day, whether it be for Trinity, whether it be in your career, for your community, something where you're just like, wow, this was an amazing moment. Somebody shone through, or you yourself brought something across the finish line. Anything like that, a story you'd like to share?
Well, in 27 years at Trinity, I have implemented so many different products. I mean, I could go through and so many different types of technologies. Like I talked about that digital log, and that was only one of them. But if I had to look at something that I think took a look at kind of everything that we've done, looking at strategic and tactical, and I don't know about calling it heroes. Not big on the whole hero thing, but I get what you're saying. We didn't know the pandemic was coming, right? But around 2015, 2016, we made a decision as an organization to become cloud first. So we started transitioning everything over to the cloud little by little. We had massive, very large data center that we've, consolidated down now because we've been moving things to the cloud. At the same time, we decided to shift from desktops to laptops, which was a thing that IT and I were working on for a while, about becoming more agile and flexible. And then we also started to utilize WebEx calling and WebEx and started trying to get people more into video conferencing, which back then video conferencing was there, but it was nowhere near where it is the level we are now. So, and then we fitted out the new building. As that process was going on, we, enabled all the conference rooms with WebEx, and no clue that where this could have went. And then when COVID-19 hit, all that strategic planning paid off, right? Because we've already moved to laptops, we embraced the cloud, we've rolled out WebEx, we were able to switch the entire organization to remote literally overnight. Because they had their laptops, they had secure VPN. That was another thing we were all about, started this whole cyber program. So secure VPN, they were all very comfortable with video conferencing. So that agility and flexibility made a huge difference. So, I mean, if you want to call it an IT hero moment, I don't know. It was really about the entire team. It was about strategic foresight and leadership backing that we had, because that's really important. So I guess I could say how would I say this? We didn't just save the day. We made sure that the day never got lost in the first place.
Wow. Yeah. Well said. Very insightful. Now, you mentioned your team there too. One of the things that I put in the intro that I think is really, really amazing is the tenure of the team and the sticking power and how much you focus on that, right? Like it means a lot to you to have an empowered team, a human team of people who are connected and performing well. Can you offer any advice to people throughout your career in terms of what it means to build a winning team, a team that wants to stay together?
So there are two sides of that. There is a plus and there is a minus, particularly of being in a smaller organization. When you grow it, so I'm a firm believer, as long as people want to consistently change and they accept change, then they can stay forever in the same place. Because as long as you're able to can keep up with that and don't get complacent, right? And that, because that's the death of, that's what kills somebody has longevity in most places and on most teams. And I've been lucky enough to have several people on my staff that have been with me for 20 plus years, because they don't get complacent and because they're driven and dedicated and feel the way I do about working for an organization that is doing something, right? Is not just making a widget or bringing something to market, like I said before. But the negative side is when you're a smaller company, it is hard for growth and progression throughout the company. So a lot of times that kind of gets in the way. Now, we've been really creative over the years on I call them in-place promotions. So like we escalate people up and we've grown, right? When I started in Trinity, we had 5 people in IT. It's funny because we had 5 people in IT, and I actually think back then it was a little bit more complex, but it's, I guess it's relative, right? Now we're up to, but there was less of a people interaction, right? Now everything's about people and process, which does make things a little bit more complex in that fashion. And now we're at 22 people in the department, and various contractors and partners. So we've grown tremendously over the years. So I don't think I could have gotten there though without the people that I trust, that are by my side, that have stayed there. And I don't look at them as people that work for me. They work with me. And I said it many, many times. You're only as good as the people that work with you. And they have a tendency to make me look good a lot. So
that's awesome. How about if you, let's go back to young Jim, right? Like if you were just starting your career today, what advice would you offer yourself in this era of AI and everything's interconnected? So, you're starting looking at networking or even just technology in general. What advice would you offer to someone starting their career?
Keep up with your technical skills. Get your hands on routers, switches, cloud tech, get those certifications, but also focus specifically on the communication skills. Again, building that trust and relationships will take you so far. And I think one of the, people ask me all the time, as a leader, what do you consider one of the best traits to have? And you could say the same, like you could say the delegation and drive your team and motivate them. I feel one of the strongest components of being a leader, and this is what I told my son and daughter, is empathy and compassion. It makes a huge difference. So if you got the technical side and you're really, and staying curious, right? It's another one. That works both ways, by the way. When you talk about networking and people, that's a strong point, right? Get curious in what you do for a living. Get curious in what you're doing on the technology side, but get curious about what people are thinking at the same time. Because when you're curious, you ask really good open-ended questions, right? And people, they trust you, right? That you build this trust with them and you get all the right information, which helps you gather requirements. These are all things I think you need to have to be a good technologist and to move forward.
Brilliant. Yeah. It's interesting how those very people-oriented things are essential in being successful as a professional, not just a technology professional, but all areas. So really, really great advice. All right, let's pivot into what we call the speed round. I'm going to ask you a couple of just Good questions, fun questions. Get your quick answer on these things. How about a favorite old school networking technology that you secretly miss? Something you wish was still with us?
I would say Novell NDS. I miss it. I mean, I know that sounds crazy, but I lived in it for so long. It was everything. And it's funny because Novell, I don't even think they exist anymore. And I mean, everything was Novell at one point. I mean, you couldn't go into a place that didn't have a Novell server. So,
And
yeah.
for our non-technical people, NDS, what's that like?
God, what is it considered? A network
Novell's
directory
a company, but what's just the overall way of operating networks?
I think it's well, let's say it's directory services. So it was God, I could say it's Active Directory, but no one's going to understand what that is. So it's the way you set users up.
Yeah.
yeah. Well, it's basically Microsoft coppering off a really good system from Novell, but yeah, I mean, it's just how you set up users in an environment. It's how you assign groups and rights and within inside of Novell's environment. It was intuitive. It was great. That's where I learned a lot. I miss Novell in general. It was a phenomenal system. I can actually give you a real quick story on Novell and why I loved it so much. I built a Novell small business server for a company. They turned out to be a fairly large company. They were a millwork company, and they had GroupWise on there, ZenWorks, and just regular Novell services. And when I stopped doing that work, consulting work, they never brought anybody else in because the box ran so well. I got a call from them, and this was a long time ago. I got a call from them about 4.5 years later because their GroupWise went down, and they weren't sure how to get to it and couldn't even find where the server was in the building. So that'll go show you how stable those Novell boxes were. They were amazing. And GroupWise was another great system. So that's why I just loved it. I love that. I love that. System.
Yeah, today's day and age, we're upgrading and changing things so often that nothing gets a chance to really be stable. Like 4 years is an eternity these days, right? Like, what has been running for 4 years? You can't even keep your phone for 4 years these days.
No, not even 6 months. Some people, man, it's crazy.
Crazy. How about most overhyped buzzword in technology right now?
That's so easy. That's generative AI. Agentic AI, anything with AI attached to it at this point. I mean, everybody's trying to slap it on their product, and I think sometimes it's used more for marketing terms than a real solution. But it has real value, has real uses. We just talked about it with my diverter valve. So, yeah, but that's definitely the buzzword.
I'm waiting for it to land in the grocery store for like you're buying products to eat that are AI oriented. Slap it everywhere,
Oh,
pretty funny. How about, let's take it a different way. If it were a part of a church, what would networking be? Don't give me the obvious answer of, well, it would be the Wi-Fi, but.
A lot of times when I think about church, I think about music because it's such a big part of a church organization itself. So, and that's an easy way in my mind to look at networking, right? Because if I wanted to compare the two, I would say that networking is like an orchestrated symphony, right? Where each device is like an instrument and each of the packets of data are a note. So when everything's working right, you don't just hear that one instrument, right? You hear this harmonious blend of music. But so everything comes together beautifully. And then like the routers and the switchers, they're like the conductors of that symphony, right? So making sure everything's in sync. But then if something's off, right away because you get that like little sour note that everybody can hear and everybody's annoyed by it. Like it can destroy the entire symphony because all they remember is that stupid sour note, even though everything you've done before worked really, really well, right? And then you got to go fix it. So I think networking as music is all about the harmony and the timing and making sure everything's playing right together. And when that happens, it works beautifully. But once one little thing goes wrong, it's over. So that's the best way I can analogize church, like, because that's the way I look at it, Yeah. I don't know how else you could do it.
No, that's it. That's perfect, Jim. What a great answer. That is just a fantastic analogy in terms of, especially I love the one note's off, because
It's
that's
over.
the thing. Like, it's such a great analogy for networking, because you do everything perfectly and one person gets lag at the wrong moment or something goes down, and all of a sudden, the entire networking organization is in the doghouse because stuff's not working right,
Yeah, like we're running on WebEx and people are like, oh, my meeting, it just was lagging. We're going to go to Zoom now. It's like, what?
Cancel culture, bye-bye, right? Like,
Oh, God.
Yeah, that's funny. That's funny. All right, last question for you. If you weren't in IT, if you could roll all the way back and you never started down the journey of technology, what would you be doing right now?
This is going to throw you for a loop, but before I got really into, which I was an electrician, so I was, local 3, I was an apprentice. That's where I got into fiber and started really getting into technology. Plus, I grew up around technology because my dad was in IT. He was a director of services for New York Life Insurance. So I've always been around it. But before all that, I swore, because my dad was in technology, I wanted nothing to do with it. Nothing. I was never, ever going to be in technology. What I was one of the youngest keepers in the New York Zoological Society. So I started there at 17 years old and became a sea lion trainer for a Queen Zoo.
Wow,
and then
totally unexpected.
Yeah. So I actually trained pinnipeds for. It's amazing. Like, I show people the pictures, like, there's no way. I did, and I also did a lot of other things in the zoo. But yes, I did that for a few years. Loved it. It was an amazing experience. The problem is there's literally no money in it whatsoever. So, and of course, when you're young and things like that you're starting to figure things out. It just didn't work for me. But maybe that's where I would have went. I don't know. I love the ocean. I love water. I love being around things like that. So that could have been where I went, but I don't know.
Wow.
Yeah.
Great. Amazing. You never cease to amaze me, Jim, with these background stories and hidden treasures. So awesome. Well, thank you very much, Jim, for coming on the podcast. Really insightful, incredible analogies. Thank you for doing what you do. Amazing organization you're a part of. It was an honor having you on our podcast today. That's it for this episode, where Jim Kennedy reminded us that computer networks are a lot like people networks. They run on trust, demand clear communications, and need the occasional firewall to keep out the bad guys. So what is IT? According to Jim, it's not just packets of data. It's people, protocols, and purpose, all orchestrated like a symphony. Miss one note, and everyone notices. Get it right, and the harmony is unforgettable. And speaking of leadership and harmony, next time we're joined by Earl Newsom, CIO of Cummins. Earl's a West Point grad, an Army veteran, mentor, and one of those rare leaders that make you feel bigger than the job you walked in to do. We'll be digging into leadership and how it's evolved over the years. Until then, whether it's routers or relationships, the real magic of networking is when everyone plays in sync. And I don't mean the band.